Good morning. We're here this morning to talk about the single largest problem impacting everyone in our city: gun violence. Everywhere I go, every group I meet with, everyone I have a conversation with asks me to do something about gun violence. Louisville is fed up with illegal guns. Over 90% of our homicides involve a gun. A majority of the suicides in our city involve a gun. Every time someone is shot and killed, it impacts a family, a workplace, a church, a neighborhood, an entire community. Every time someone picks up a gun and uses it to hurt someone else in our city, hundreds of people are affected. Today, I stand with others who have been personally impacted by gun violence to tell you that we are taking action to get illegal guns off of the streets of Louisville, to make Louisville safer. Currently today, when a crime is committed with a gun, LMPD seizes that gun. Following the completion of the legal process, that gun is required to be turned over to the Kentucky State Police. And again, under current state law, that gun is then auctioned off by the Kentucky State Police. These guns that are used to commit crimes end up back on our streets. And too often, guns that are used to commit crimes are used to commit another crime. That needs to stop. So earlier today, I gave this memorandum to Interim Chief of Police Jacqueline Gwynn Villaroel, directing LMPD to remove the firing pins from thousands of guns in our city that have been used to commit a crime. These are guns that have been confiscated by our police. These are guns that have been used to commit burglaries, assaults, and homicides. These are guns that have been used to kill children, to tear families apart, and destroy the lives of countless people throughout our city. This action that we're taking today will render these guns inoperable. Under state law, we are required, once removing the pins, to still turn them over to the Kentucky State Police. But when we return them to the Kentucky State Police, these guns, starting today, will have a warning label affixed to them. A warning label that tells anyone who sees it about the impact of gun violence and homicides on our city, particularly the number of kids who in Louisville have been killed by gun violence. We will also be promoting legislation that we'll be talking about in a second to change Kentucky law so that we have even more ability to crack down on illegal guns. This issue is personal to every one of us up here today and to thousands of others around our city. The chief recently lost a young nephew to gun violence. The Gwynn family, who is with us here today, has lost a son to gun violence. And their daughter has been injured in a separate incident to gun violence. Those of us here today, know the personal impact of guns on our community, and we are committed to taking action. Let me now turn it over to our Chief of Police, Jackie Gwynn Villaroel. Chief?
To the mayor, to the elected officials here today, to the Louisville citizens as a whole, and to our media. Again, the top priority for LMPD is to actually continue to drive down violent crime. is to continue to remove those weapons off of the street that have caused so much harm and devastation to so many families. And to personally be able to stand here today and to speak to so many to let you know that the impact of violence never goes away. The residual effects last for years to come. But what do? Today we're just, again, another call for action for each and every one of us to actually own up to it and make a conscious decision to say no more. So any way that we possibly can legally to ensure that another family is not in our position, that is what we should do. And so I thank you for, again, understanding that gun violence in Louisville, in any city, should not be tolerated.
Thank you, Chief. Today is just the first step in our administration's efforts to end our illegal gun trade, to end our illegal gun crisis, and get Metro government out of the gun business. Right now, state law forbids us from outright destroying these guns. That's frustrating, disappointing, and dangerous. When we seize drugs in our city, we don't put those drugs back on the street and give them to a different drug dealer. We destroy them. Why don't we do the same thing with guns? I want our city to do our part and permanently destroy illegal guns that have been used to commit crimes once in our city. Once is too many. Fortunately, State Representative Couture-Herron filed a bill in Frankfurt yesterday that would change the law to allow Louisville to destroy guns that have been confiscated by police that are used to shoot and kill people all over our city. My team and I will be fighting for this bill in Frankfurt, and we hope state legislators will do the right thing and give Louisville the freedom that we want and need to get guns off of our street once and for all. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Krista Gwynn, who, as I mentioned earlier, lost her son to gun violence and her daughter has been injured. Ms. Gwynn?
Good morning. I'm the mother of Christian. This is my husband, Lavada, and my daughter, Lavada. And this is a pandemic. Believe it or not, it is horrible. It's reckless. And right now, what Mayor Greenberg is doing is the step forward that we need to do. We need to get these guns out of the hands of these kids and illegal people that are not able to possess it legally. They need to have it removed. So taking the pen out right now is a stepping stone, and I appreciate that. But the gun that killed my son should be destroyed. The gun that shot my daughter should be destroyed. My daughter was shot with a .223. Why would you put that back in recycling of the people to buy it again? It should be destroyed, not be bought again. You got a life on that gun. You shouldn't want to own it. So what he's doing now, I appreciate. That's a stepping stone to where we need to be later on. And I know it's a day at a time, and I know he's working to get this done. Take the pen out, then maybe next year we can destroy the gun itself. And I appreciate y'all listening to me, but I'm the face of that gun that took my son's life and it wounded my daughter, who she lost her friend. It should not come back on the street. And he's fighting to get that done, and I stand with him with that. Thank you.
Family for your courage and strength in dealing with the aftermath of your personal tragedy that all too many Louisvillians have faced, and continuing to work with us in this effort. I mentioned earlier, every one of us here today has a personal story, about how gun violence has impacted us. For me, this week marks 1 year since an individual walked into our campaign office and fired 6 gunshots directly at me. I'm fortunate to still be here today. A year later, I don't know how or why I'm here, but since that happened, I've known what I'm going to do. And what I'm doing is taking resolve every day as mayor of Louisville to crack down on illegal guns and reduce the amount of gun violence in our city. The thought that the gun that was used to try to kill me might end back on the streets of Louisville and be used to try to kill or worse someone else is unthinkable. It's wrong. We can't let that happen. This gun, right here, this gun was used by a 17-year-old child in Louisville who attempted to kill another 17-year-old child in Louisville. Fortunately, the victim survived with gunshot wounds. This gun should never end up back on the streets of Louisville and have the opportunity to be used in another crime. We must stop this madness. We must do everything that we can to crack down on illegal guns. We recognize that this policy is just a start. It's not the complete solution. But we can't sit by while hundreds of people are murdered in Louisville every year by guns. So if this plan prevents one person from losing their life or being injured by a gun, if this plan prevents one family from not having to suffer like the Gwynn family is suffering, then this is worth it. I hope our friends in Frankfurt, I hope the General Assembly will support Representative Herron's bill and pass this bill so we can do even more to ensure that guns that are used to commit crimes in Louisville are never used to commit another crime again. Thank you all very much, and I'm happy to take a few questions from the media.
Chief, I got a couple questions for you. Can you, in layman's terms, describe what removing the pin does? And by keeping the pin with the weapon, when you send it to state police, doesn't that kind of, whoever ends up with that can still use the weapon if they know how to put the pin back in?
Yes, and you are right. They can still use the weapon, but however, they have to insert that pin back into that weapon in order for it to fire and be operational again. At this point, with the executive order issued to me, the pin will be removed, and we will actually keep that pin with that weapon and then transport it to the other entity that will actually take it from there and do what they need to do with that weapon. So our position on this is we're going to be doing what we are advised to do, and then the other entity would do what they have to do.
Is it a simple process of putting that pin right back into the weapon and using
I'm
it?
not an armorer, so I don't want to speak on that and be out of line.
What's the stockpile right now of firearms?
We have thousands of those because guess what? LMPD is doing the work by removing illegal guns off the streets. And so we're doing it the right way. We're doing it by true constitutional policing. And we're making sure those individuals that do not have the right to be in possession of that weapon, that we are safely removing them and that we are doing all that we can to be safe in that process. And so at this moment, we have thousands of weapons, and we're continuing to do the work to keep Louisville safe.
And do you know how many are being sent to KSP each month, each year?
At one point, it was like 250 to 350 weapons each month being sent to KSP. So that will give you an idea of the work that LMPD is doing on a daily basis to make sure that we're keeping our citizens safe.
Chief, specifically talking about those guns that are auctioned off, do you have any confirmation or statistic that shows that those same guns, specifically in the auction, are being used in wrongful crimes?
No, I don't. But if you're looking at how our cases are adjudicated and once it's over, a murder has been adjudicated. Now somebody is sentenced for that murder. And now that weapon is no longer needed for that case. So my summation would be, that's the same weapon that we just talked about that is now moving forward within that pile to be auctioned off. So again, I don't have that certain or that exact statistic, but nonetheless, that weapon is in the pile.
There is some data that we have that we can share about guns that have gone through the cycle and have ended up on the streets again. I've spoken to officers about this experience themselves, and there's been other reporting done on that. So we'd be happy to provide that to you. And let me also just add one thing in addition to what the chief said about pulling the pins. We would like to go further. We unfortunately are limited in our ability right now by Kentucky state law. But my conscience is clear. Citizens of Louisville, our conscience should be clear. We are doing with this action today what we are legally permitted to do under current state law to take a step towards reducing the amount of illegal guns on our street. If someone else further down the chain in this cycle puts that pin back on them, packing the gun, that's on them.
Mayor, do you expect any legal action from the NRA because of this move, and if so, what would be your response to that?
We believe that the action that we're taking today is clearly permitted under Kentucky state law. We are advocating to change Kentucky state law so we can do even more and permanently destroy these weapons. But we have sought legal counsel and are confident that what we're doing today is permitted under Kentucky law.
Mayor Greenberg, the other side of this, of course, is that police departments across the state get grants from these guns that are auctioned. Louisville and the police department have in the past been recipients of those grants. Have you directed the city and the department to no longer apply for the grants that are funded by these guns at auctions?
Let me be clear, the amount that LMPD receives every year from those grants is very small compared to the entire LMPD budget. LMPD we will ensure that LMPD has the resources that it needs, that the officers have the resources they need to be protected and to do their job the way that we're all working together as a community for LMPD to do its job to prevent violent crime from happening and to keep everyone in Louisville safe. I think at most it's been a couple of $100,000 in any 1 year. And I will ensure that as long as I'm mayor, LMPD has the resources and that they do not fall short in their resources in that regard because of this change in policy.
Chief, can you walk me through the timeline of when a gun is seized to when the firing pin would be removed and then turned over to KSP?
That's case by case. I really can't, because it depends on the corpse and everything and when we actually come in possession of that weapon. So that is case by case. Okay.
Mayor, I have a question. We talked a couple weeks ago about, you admitted that state law is pretty stringent when it comes to making moves like these. Have you had conversations specifically with heads of Kentucky State Police? What have they told you as far as how they feel about an action like this?
I have spoken with a couple of folks from the local and state FOP and let them know that we were going to be proposing this law. I will let them speak for themselves on what their issue is. I hope on what their views are. My hope is that everyone across the state of Kentucky views this as a common sense law that lets Louisville address our unique gun violence crisis in a unique way to ensure that illegal guns are never used to commit another crime again.
One more question, guys.
Mayor, are there any other cities with similar policies that this was modeled after, and have they actually seen a change?
Unfortunately, Kentucky is unique in its law. Our laws prevent us from doing things that other cities can do. I would like to do a lot more to crack down on illegal guns, but we can't because of current Kentucky law, and that's why we're proposing to provide this one exception for Louisville to deal with its unique issue. So I'm not aware of any other cities that are in states that have the same stringent laws that prevent our city from keeping illegal guns off the streets. It simply makes no sense. Thank you all very much.
If you do nothing else,
If you do nothing else.
Do nothing else.
If you 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 do